Good evening, LaPorte County High School football fans, and welcome to the first edition of the Friday Night Spotlight High School Football Podcast Show. I'm Travis Harmon-Smith, and area high school football fans, welcome to the first edition. I'm sure many of you have been waiting for football season to arrive, particularly high school football, especially around the region. High school football teams across Northwest Indiana opened the 2016 season this past Friday night, and there were several Week 1 surprises, perhaps blowouts for that matter, starting with a few area teams in LaPorte County. Michigan City was on the road in Week 1 against Griffith as first-year head coach Phil Mason handled the Panthers, winning by a large margin, 49-28. And with the two-headed monster running back tandem of Arian Vasey and Division I prospect Marquise Hurt, the Wolves were astounding on the ground as the duo combined for a staggering 264 yards rushing. Kane Vesey had 12 carries for 140 yards rushing with 2 touchdowns, while Ball State commit Marquise Hurt carried 20 times for 124 yards and 3 touchdowns. The Wolves were more effective in the running game in Week 1, although Wolves quarterback Mike McCullough had a solid evening, going 7 of 17 for 80 yards passing, along with 13 carries for 69 yards rushing. Another interesting note, the Wolves defensive unit looks pretty awesome from my personal analysis. For anyone who's out there listening currently, I had the opportunity to attend the New Prairie scrimmage just over a week ago, and after seeing the linebacker play of Orson Eckwood and Nuke Woodard, in addition to the defensive line, I mean, those guys are some really hard hitters, and you have to wonder what the Wolves will bring to the table from a defensive standpoint this season. I'm just curious and anxious to see what happens on the defensive side of the ball for the Wolves. Michigan City is currently 1-0 the season and will return back next Friday night on August 26th for their first home opener at Ames Field, facing visiting Northridge. Everyone in the Michigan City area should get out and support the Wolves at Ames Field next Friday night. Should be an exciting matchup. Turning things over, next we have the LaPorte Slicers, as the Slicers and the New Prairie Cougars fought tooth and nails during their Week 1 matchup, but it was the Slicers who had more fuel in the tank, defeating the Cougars on the road 21-20. Slicer running back Brendan Long had a marvelous evening on the ground for LaPorte's offense, as Long racked up 112 yards on 15 carries following the game-winning score. New Prairie quarterback Nick Wilson made his first varsity debut behind center with 30 carries for 97 yards and 2 touchdowns. In the Cougars' high-powered triple-option offense, the Slicers will return to Kiwanis Field next Friday night on August 26th, facing the visiting Hobart Brickies, which should be a good one, folks. And New Prairie will face South Bend Clay on the road. What a fantastic week of area high school football it was for LaPorte County teams. As we switch it over to Week 1 of the Dueling Conference scores, one thing that's interesting to me, and I'm sure it's going to be interesting to our listeners that I wanted to note, is the fact that all the teams in the Dueling Conference have moved up to Class 6A due to the large numbers in school enrollment, while Michigan City still remains 5A. And it's very interesting and not ironic. I'm wondering, with the emergence of the Michigan City football program under first-year head coach Phil Mason, you have to wonder if Michigan City could make the jump to 6A. Maybe not. Just wanted to mention that. Here's some other Week 1 scores from across the Dueling Conference, starting with the Trojans of Chesterton as they defeated Kokomo 14-7. Crown Point took care of business against Lowell in what seemed to be a defensive showdown, winning in 2 overtimes, 10-3. Lake Central defeats Munster 35-7. Maryville is over Andrean 35-7. Portage also loses to Mishawaka 21-7, while the Penn Kingsmen defeated Valparaiso 27-7. Those are the scores from Week 1 in the Dueling Conference. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll wrap things up for the first edition of Friday Night Spotlight. You're listening to Friday Night Spotlight with Travis Harmon-Smith. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Friday Night Spotlight as we wrap things up, for Week 1 across the area in the Dueling Conference. Before we get off the air, here's a few more scores from across the state. First, we start with Ben Davis as they defeated Indianapolis Tech demoralizingly 70-0. Brownsburg defeats Bloomington South 28-26. Also, Columbus East defeats Bloomington North 62-7. Heading down to the metropolitan area around Indianapolis, we have Indianapolis Arlington defeating Clarksville 52-0. 0. Indianapolis Cathedral was over East Noble 48-0. And alongside, we also have Hamilton Southeastern, who defeated Carmel closely 27-21. Those were a few scores from across the state. That wraps up a few scores. And I would also like to thanks to all our listeners that tuned in to Friday Night Spotlight for the first airing of the show. I would want to say to all the Michigan City area residents, including all the area residents in LaPorte County, tune in every Saturday for high school football updates, scores, and analysis across LaPorte County, Northwest Indiana, and around the state. As the season moves forward, I'll have players and coaches from around the area join me on Friday Night Spotlight for post-game interviews and discussion. Once again, thanks for joining me this week on Friday Night Spotlight for the first edition. Tune in next Saturday at 6:30 p.m. for high school football updates across LaPorte County and Northwest Indiana. I'm Travis Harmon-Smith, and you're listening to Friday Night Spotlight. Good night, everyone.